Believe it or not, there was a point in time where Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate and viewed as the next franchise quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was playing at an MVP level in 2017 before tearing his ACL, and the rest you could say is history. Nick Foles went on to have the postseason of his life, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and Carson Wentz was never the same player. And over the past 5 years with Carson, there's been flashes of him being the player he was in 2017, and it even showed up during his time as the Commanders' starting quarterback in 2022. But the play at times has been overwhelmingly bad, and Wentz makes the simplest mistakes, and it always seems to rear its head at the worst time. And in today's video, we're going to deep dive into Carson Wentz's 2022 season and break down what went wrong for him. This is not going to be a video solely slandering Wentz, as there were some highlight plays where you think this guy has the tools, but can't consistently use them the way a franchise needs him to. And there is a lot to dive into in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by showing one of the best plays Carson Wentz made all season. This was a 75-yard play-action touchdown to Dyami Brown on 1st and 10, which ultimately gave Washington a 10-7 lead. This was great situational awareness by Carson Wentz to take this shot, because if it's incomplete, then they live to see 2nd and 10, and even in the worst case, if it's intercepted, it's equivalent to a punt, and it's early enough in the game to not come back and bite the Commanders in the ass. And not only was this a great play, it was also a great play call, as the stacked receivers are both running crossing routes, which brings the safety down to Terry McLaurin, hoping he can either knock the ball away or get an interception himself. Meanwhile, this leaves Caleb Farley one-on-one with Dyami Brown, and within this play, you can see Farley thought he had help over the top with the safety dropping down as Brown sprints right by him. You can even see Farley reach out to try and grab Dyami as he runs by to slow him down, as Wentz is winding up to throw the deep ball at this point. Ultimately, Farley stumbles, and as he's falling down, he reaches out for an unsuccessful arm tackle, and the Commanders put 6 points on the board. Taking those deep shots is about calculated risk, and this was a very low-risk, high-reward throw that you love to see Wentz take a gamble on. But for every play like that where you see Wentz recognizes he has a chance to take a deep shot because the safety was pulled down, which again was a great play call, like for every great moment Carson has, there's an equally bad play to counter it, and I like to call this the Carson Wentz roller coaster, if you will, and here's an example. This is a 3rd and 6 in what was a very forgettable game for the Commanders against the Browns, and a game where Carson Wentz threw 3 interceptions. Pre-snap, you can make a very educated guess that Cleveland is going to be running man-to-man coverage, as the corners aren't as close to the line of scrimmage all the way across the board for no reason, especially with the stack at the top of the screen. Obviously, Myles Garrett wasn't going to cover J.D. McKissic one-on-one, as J.D. was chipping him, but you can guess this is either cover 2 man or cover 1 robber, with one of John Johnson or Grant Delpit coming down to play the robber role. And it turned out to be the latter of the two, and both Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney get chipped, which, for an empty call on 3rd and 6, there were several good coaching decisions before the play started. Myles was getting chipped and eventually double-teamed, and all Carson has to do is make a read. And once he gets the ball in his hands from the shotgun snap, his eyes are glued, and I mean glued, on Terry McLaurin, which usually isn't a bad option, but it is in this scenario when Denzel Ward has outside leverage on him and wants to force him to the middle of the field. Meaning Denzel purposely lined up outside of Terry before the ball was snapped because he knew he had both John Johnson and Grant Delpit in the middle of the field to help him if Terry were running a drag or a dig route. Terry is instead running a 7 route, which perfectly plays into Denzel's hands, and it also helped Denzel that Wentz was staring at him the entire play. What Wentz didn't see on this 3rd and 6 was Curtis Samuel getting separation because there was a natural pick that occurred, and Wentz could have easily progressed through his read and hit Samuel for a first down. He never looks at him, and this gives Cleveland the football with the ball deep in Washington's territory, and 5 plays later, the Browns make it a 3-0 game. And the Commanders were extremely lucky it wasn't a 7-0 game due to an interception that was just downright reckless. Wentz's second interception of this game occurred later in the half on another 3rd down, and it was brutal. During the breakdown of the touchdown to Dyami Brown, we praised Wentz for taking a shot as the time was right, and the coverage was 2 for the play, and it worked. Unfortunately, it was not right here, as Cleveland is running a Tampa 2, with Deion Jones running up the seam, and he does a tremendous job of doing so to allow Grant Delpit to float in under this pass for the INT. Washington is running a route combination where 3 guys are running deep with 2 underneath, and this is a classic example of Carson not taking what was in front of him when he should have. With all of the noise and the guys running deep, J.D. McKissic sneaks out of the backfield, and Wentz has an easy check down to gain 8 or 9 yards, which would have been enough for a first. There were no players around McKissic as Denzel Ward was drifting back in his zone, which inevitably left the check down wide open, and Wentz could have thrown this away from linebacker Tony Fields, where JD could have fought to get the first down, yet threw an absolute duck deep down the middle of the field on a play that gave the Browns the football on their own 47-yard line. Carson also severely underthrew this football, and there's never been a question of Wentz's arm strength, as he can easily rip the ball every bit of 60 yards, but with a clean pocket, he makes a terrible decision and it costs the team. This was a play that shouldn't have been made at the college level, let alone the NFL level, and I truly don't understand what Carson was trying to accomplish in the first place. Deion did a great job of playing the tadpole of the Tampa 2, the safeties held their own on the deep routes, and Carson was presented with a clear option to go to move the sticks, yet throws one of the biggest ducks you'll see at the NFL level. And what's particularly frustrating for Wentz is he's not a rookie or even a second-year player. These are mistakes on both interceptions we've showed so far that occurred in the same game and even in the same half, by the way, that shouldn't have happened in the first place. Now, the next play I want to highlight occurred in the first of the 2 games against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are running a blitz, and what's especially stressful for the Commanders' offensive line pre-play is they have no idea who's coming or if they're going to drop out and run a zone coverage. They could be bluffing and only send 3 guys and force Carson to make a very tight throw in what is already a very condensed area of the field. But the Cowboys are sending 6 with Leighton Vander Esch sitting at the line in what is essentially a quarterback spy role to ensure that Wentz doesn't escape, and if he does, he's right there to make the tackle. It's man-to-man across the board on 3rd and 3 in a 6-0 game. Defensive coordinator Dan Quinn has a few things in mind when calling this pre-snap. Force the ball out quick, and if we're lucky, Carson will panic under pressure and we get either an incompletion, or even better, an interception in the red zone. Or, of course, we get a sack and it becomes 4th and 10, and they would have to kick the field goal. And the unsung hero of this play is running back Antonio Gibson, who knew he was getting a free running linebacker off the edge in Anthony Barr, and he drops his shoulder and puts his helmet right on Barr's thigh and slows him down just enough for Wentz to make this throw in man coverage. And for Wentz, this is what teams fell in love with. The play clock was expiring as the ball was snapped. He recognized the blitz right away, knew his time was very, very limited, sets his feet, has a good base, and puts the ball where Jahan Dotson, and only Jahan Dotson, can go make a play. Corner Anthony Brown had good coverage on this play, and for as cliche as this sounds, what has to be remembered is these guys are paid to make plays too. And even for the jokes people like to get in about Carson Wentz, this was an absolute dime when factoring everything in, and this is the type of play teams get excited about. He can make any throw in the book, it's just a matter of consistency. Not all interceptions quarterbacks throw are created equal, and Carson did throw 2 in the Dallas game, and we will break down both of them. But what I want to point out here is I have no problem with Carson taking this chance, considering the circumstances at this point in the game. There were 17 seconds left in the first half, and the Commanders were down 5, and if this play hits, Jahan Dotson has his second touchdown of the game, or at minimum a very big play that sets up Washington right before the half to kick a field goal and to go into the half down 2 instead of 5. Dallas had a too high shell pre-snap and could have rolled it into quarters coverage and basically played a prevent defense to close the half. But they actually rolled it into a cover 1, and Trayvon Diggs lets Jahan Dotson get behind him while simultaneously knowing exactly where he is and uses the boundary as a second defender so he can put himself into a good position to get the interception. And Trayvon didn't have 11 interceptions in 2021 by accident, and he made a good play here both on the ball and a good mental play as well, but this interception was shown because if you take a look at Wentz's stat line from the Dallas game, in a game Washington lost 25-10, you can probably make the assumption Wentz didn't play well, and because he didn't play well and threw 2 interceptions, they lost. And the second interception in this game was as bad as either of the ones we showed in the Cleveland game, and the situation was the worst out of any of the ones we've discussed in today's video. There was 5.5 minutes left to play in the game, and the Commanders have 3rd and 8 on their own 13-yard line. Dallas isn't running anything special here, and because of the depth the corners are playing at pre-snap, you can argue it looks like they're playing cover 3, but they actually rotate into the same Tampa 2 Cleveland got a Wentz interception on later in the year. And why this one is particularly bad is Deron Bland is waiting on this turnaround route by Curtis Samuel and is cheating over the entire time. Wentz again predetermines he's going to Curtis Samuel before the snap, and all Bland does here is read Wentz's eyes. And technically speaking, he is a little out of position of where he's supposed to be, but he started to lean to where Curtis Samuel is because he knows Carson has a habit of staring receivers down, and Carson's peripheral vision at times is lacking for, well, lack of a better word. Tight end Logan Thomas was running a delayed route, and this is as open as you ever see at the NFL level, and I get that it was 3rd and 8, that the Commanders were down 2 scores with 5.5 to play, and that this certainly wasn't the sexiest option, and hell, there's a chance Logan wouldn't even get to the 21-yard line, which is where the first down line was. But when you freeze the play when Carson is winding up to throw the pass, where is he supposed to go? The 17-yard dig wasn't open, and I think Trayvon Diggs would have tried to undercut it for his second interception of the game, and Logan Thomas was the open player in this situation. And by the way, Deron Bland cheated over to make this play instead of staying where he was, which in theory would have been closer to where Thomas is, because if he doesn't cheat and Carson makes the smart read and throws it to Logan instead, 30 seconds go off the clock and the Commanders pick up anywhere from 7 to 10 yards and are still deep in their own territory. So Bland makes a low-risk, high-reward play pay off for the Cowboys, and 3 plays later, the Cowboys nearly take an additional 2 minutes off the clock and make a 12-point lead with time winding down in the fourth, a 15-point lead. Carson's biggest problem is not consistently reading the field, and it's cost him a lot over the years, and 2022 was no different. It's not that he can't play under pressure, as believe it or not, he completed just 0.3% less passes than Patrick Mahomes did under pressure last year, and completed more than Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, and Trevor Lawrence. And even factoring in drops and throwaways, Wentz still had a higher completion percentage than all of these guys minus Mahomes. But Wentz is very gifted athletically, but unfortunately has trouble reading coverages at the NFL level, which is not easy for anyone to do. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown, as that's all I have, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as only about 25% of people watching are subscribed, so if you do enjoy, please help the channel out, as it would be very much appreciated. Until next time, please be safe, and have a great day. Love you guys.